participants, may we ask you please to take your places? The next panel is just about to start. Thank you. You press it, then it gets red, then it's... No. So welcome back, everyone, and I hope the others will join us in a moment. Allow me just to make to refer to one issue before we start. In the break, some people talked to me, especially from the region, that there are some laws which are in the process of being changed and have been changed in Lebanon regarding the access to Syrian refugees in Lebanese schools. And I would just like to say that if we are criticizing some of the matters regarding the situation of refugee children, we are by no means criticizing the countries for the hospitality and the enormous effort they are doing in hosting these number of refugees in the region. Austria has taken last year about 90,000 refugees, and we are definitely not in the position to tell Lebanon with 1.2 million officially registered what is best and how it is best to integrate refugee children. So just to make that point clear, and the same applies to Turkey and to Jordan. We are here to think together and to learn from the experiences of one another, and this is the spirit that we hope will be leading us during the next 2 days. This morning we focused on the Nihad region and on the issue of education in the Nihad region regarding Syrian refugees. Now we are trying to bridge to the situation in Europe, and we wanted not only to focus on the issue of integrating refugee children in schools in Europe, but to open it to what does it mean to have diversity and social cohesion in school rooms within Europe. And just to set the context for Austria, last year, in 2016, our schools in Austria have taken 14,200 refugee children into their classrooms in all the states within Austria. 86% of them are either in preschool or in the middle school, and only 14% are being integrated into high school. And allow me to start this panel again with a voice. Welcome with me, please, Yasmin from Syria. Yasmin, willkommen. Jasmin, du bist 15 Jahre alt, du warst in Damaskus in der Schule, du bist seit über 1,5 Jahren.
So you're 15 years old, you went to school in Damascus, but you've been in Austria for a year and a half now. You're schooled now here, and you're also supported by Teach for Austria. What is your experience here in this Austrian school? You're in a second level school. So what's it like? What is different? What was easy? What is not that easy? What are you wishing for? What could be changed or should be changed in school?
I am at school, learning the language. In Syria, I was very, very outstanding in my studies, and I wanted to join a private school, but unfortunately we came to here. The school I'm in, I'm attending classes with the Afghanis, and unfortunately the Afghan children have not learned anything about mathematics or science and physics or chemistry, and these are my favorite subjects. But what I learned that because of the mixture of students, I'm not able to get enough of those. I will go next year to the gymnasium, and I will need a whole year in order to remember what I've already studied back in Syria. The same thing applies to chemistry. As to maths, I'm trying to recall and remember what I did. My brother's trying to help me. I ask him to help me with my studies in order not to forget what I've already learned. Whereas chemistry and other subjects, I've unfortunately forgot it all. So the subjects that you are learning at the moment are not equivalent to what you've learned. They are the same. However, they're not at the same level. I mean, the topics are the same, but I'm not learning at the same level like I was learning in Syria, because if I was back in Syria, I would have had to spend 2 more years and then go to university. But unfortunately, with the Afghan students, they don't know very much about maths. And they're finding that very hard and difficult to deal with. I'm just learning what is being shown on the blackboard. I don't even have a book. I don't have a book to look at or practice in. You learned German here, did you? Yes, but I think the grammar is very difficult. I am trying to learn. Yes, grammar is difficult, but I understand that you participated in a competition in German and in Arabic. And the subject was your journey from Syria to here. Yes, I did. Yes, it was nice. And I have an appointment to attend another round of competition. I'm speaking in Arabic and German, and I have to prepare some things in advance about my experiences, and I tell my story to people. And they've made another appointment, but at the moment it's been postponed. Next to you, there is a professor from also, and he's joining you in this journey. So how is it for you that you have somebody that assists you and helps you? That's excellent for me. Yes, they've dealt with me in a very nice way, and they've been very generous. They've given me time. They stood by me at school. And I think they've been absolutely wonderful with students. They give us a lot. Whatever we ask for, we get. But as I say, the only thing I wanted to have more, maybe books to do with maths and chemistry, and I want to learn at higher level. As I said, my concern and worry is my colleagues from Afghanistan, who are not really at the same level. Thank you very much, Yasmin, and I hope that the school and teach for us
والكيمياء وبلكي في إمكانية إنه نلاقي حد.
And maybe somebody can help you at school in order to go to your secondary school and finish schooling and go to university. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
So, you didn't get it. I'm sorry. So I wanted to start with you, Barbara. So welcome to the session. One of the things that was raised by Yasmin is that she's placed in a classroom which is not up to the level of education she had in Syria. And so though she's learning German and she's happy in the school and is being integrated, She has forgot all that she had learned in physics and chemistry, and math is not up to the level that she was on. I would like to ask you, where are we in regard to diversity and social cohesion? Isn't also only a challenge Yasmin is facing?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be in such a diverse setting, and I'm used to meet a lot of colleagues and experts on the European Union level, but mostly I don't meet people from the region, Mediterranean region, and so it's really very interesting for me to be here. Concerning diversity and social cohesion, I want to start with a little story about Austria, because Austria has experienced during the last 15 years quite an impressive increase of the share of pupils with foreign-born parents and with languages at home other than German. So we are, after Luxembourg, the country with the highest shares in the European Union. And at the same time, which is really interesting, and it's not talked a lot about, we managed to diminish the gap in proficiency in reading when we look at the PISA data from the year 2000 to 2012 by more than half of the points. That is, with increasing diversity, we also managed to decrease the competence gap. So I want to deliver here a positive message. It's not everything fine and wonderful, but it's not as negative as a lot of political discussions might portray. So the share of pupils with foreign-born parents or multilingual pupils is by no means an indication for the competence level of the country. When we compare, for example, the traditional immigration countries which have the highest shares, like Canada and Australia, also highest shares of multilingual pupils, they are very far ahead in many terms of countries who have a very low share. So this is just to start off, to be aware of the statistical analyses, which are clear on that point. So when we talk about these standardized test scores, which are really important, it's about knowledge and competences, but this is only one side, of course, of schooling and education. We have more goals in education, which, for example, is pluralism and solidarity. And so just to break it down a little bit, what are these competences we wish the pupils to have? This is empathy, this is change of perspective, this is awareness that situations and interactions are quite complex. It's never clear-cut and easy, so you have to be able to grasp a situation in its complexity and in its ambiguity. So the tolerance for ambiguity, for those unclear messages situations is a very important democratic competence for plural societies. And maybe the most important, the critical self-reflection, the ability for critical self-reflection is one of the most important ones in a plural society. When we look at the research results that let's say, summarize the research the last 2-3 decades on country comparative analysis on migration societies. And here we look at European societies who have experienced inflows from the 1950s, 1960s on, and who, most of them, didn't declare themselves as countries of immigration, but it was the fact. Then, of course, first and foremost is the access and availability to educational facilities and So there is no residence permit necessary, for example, to participate in education in Austria. This is for many decades. So if you are not registered, and you and your child is 6 years old, nevertheless, it has the duty, or you as a parent have the duty to send the child to school, and the school has the duty to educate the child. So this is quite important. Then when we have done, for example, a research where we looked at grown-up second generation with parents from Turkey who went to different countries in Europe, and what were the factors that were most important for school success. And this was one, the age of first participation in educational facilities, kindergarten. So the availability and the access to kindergarten is is a very important one. The quality of kindergarten, the composition of classrooms. When you think about school leadership, how are the school leaders composing the classrooms? It's about socio-economic composition, it's about socio-cultural composition. The composition of schools, where do you build facilities? In which neighborhoods? How are the regulations that are the catchment areas for schools? The selection procedures, the grade repetition, for example. We have seen an enormous amount of grade repetition among students with migration background. But if you look at the research results, that doesn't benefit anyone. You can really forget about grade repetition. That doesn't help, it just costs. The ability tracking. The later, the better. We have seen very clear results on tracking with age 15, 16, opens up much more opportunities for students from families who cannot support their children as much as, let's say, middle-class families. The intercultural opening up of schools. So it's a question of organizational development, it's a question of developing the personnel, and of course instruction. Teaching, instruction, didactics. How much do teachers, and we already talked about it, know about anti-racist, prejudice-sensitive teaching? How do they work with collaborative learning? And last but not least, the initial and further education of teacher is probably the first thing to tackle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for being so tough. I was saying this is my German socialization, so bear with me as an Austrian who was, as an Austrian of Palestinian origin who was educated in Germany, a tough mixture. That's why I'm being very tough on time. Annette, you did some research on how refugee children perceive social cohesion. So maybe you can share with us some of your insights. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me here today and sharing some of my results. I did a study on educational experiences of refugee youth in Germany and Canada. So you mentioned Canada already. I think it's a very interesting comparison, especially when we talk about specialized schooling, segregated schooling versus inclusive schooling. And I brought some of my results here on this aspect, specialized versus inclusive schooling. And in my study, I tried to add a different kind of angle. I really tried to give a space for the voices of the youth. So I have also some quotes here from the youth that spoke to me. Educational structures in Munich and Toronto show very different approaches when it comes to schooling of young people of refugee background. In the city of Munich, structures for refugee youth focus on vocational training, specialized schooling projects, and language preparation classes in vocational schools are the main option for youth from age 16. Evaluation of these programs showed that they are a good alternative for youth with limited prior schooling and a high interest into a fast transition into workplace. But youth with high educational aspirations, and we just had one youth that was very strongly speaking about her aspirations, may perceive these structures as exclusion from higher secondary schools and systemic discrimination. Voices of youth show that in these programs they may feel separated and excluded from regular schooling system and the host society. And this becomes very visible in this quote from Husini, a young man that spoke to me in Munich. Now I'm here at a specialized schooling project, and I think we are all immigrants in one school, and we can't go to school with youth from Germany or participate there. And that's just one example, but I had lots of that in my interviews. In the city of Toronto, an inclusive schooling approach offers secondary educational options for diverse refugee youth. Young people with refugee background can attend high school until age 21. So not only like here until and in Germany until age 15 or 16. Based on multicultural policies, a broad support system is implemented, including English as second language classes, settlement workers at schools, and newcomer group. And now I have here a little quote from a young man who attended a newcomer group, and he explains what he's doing in this group. In the newcomer group, we're discussing about school, and then we write it down and give it to the vice principal. We said, there's a problem, we need more ESL, that's English as a second language classes. You know, like a second class for ESL. So that can be more students joining that class. So yeah, and then they opened a second ESL class. So what this young man experiences here in this school system is that he's empowered, and his motivation and his aspirations are supported through this experience of empowerment. I will conclude now. Inclusion in the regular schooling system in Toronto fosters relations between refugee youth and other groups. It enables youth to build bridging networks into the host society. And segregated schooling, on the other hand, in Munich, is one of the main critiques in Munich. The high school system in Toronto offers a broad range of educational pathways for refugee youth. In Munich, vocational training is the main option, but this also might be beneficiary for some groups because it leads into a fast transition into workplace. Talking about refugee youth, we shouldn't forget about their resources. The refugee experience may lead to proactive coping strategies and to a high personal value of education. And I have a last quote now, a young woman, a asylum seeker that talked to me. And she said, "'Cause we come here with the spirit of going to school. 'Cause that's the most important thing. We can, we want, we come here hoping. If you don't have education, you don't have a future. Because education is something important to gather knowledge, to be somebody."
Thank you so much, Annette. Education is important to be somebody. And allow me to be a bit now shifting in the program. One of our visitors from one of the schools here, Mohadesa, is 16-year-old coming from Afghanistan, and she just sent me a message saying she would also want to share something. So we are as flexible as this. Willkommen.
Dankeschön.
Also, ich wollte nur sagen,
I just wanted to say that even in Afghanistan, we do have people who know something about math and other subjects, and there's also people from other countries who don't know anything about math. This always depends on the possibilities given to people. It is not our fault that in Afghanistan we can't go to school so that we will learn. It is not our fault, really. Thank you.
Danke, Muhadisa, and I think it very much connects to what. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's good. No, it's no problem.
I also wanted to say that if someone wishes to go to further education, what is important is what that person does. So if someone wants to pursue further education, go to grammar school, you don't have several Afghan people in one class that will then prevent people from other countries to acquire further knowledge. Everyone has rights, and everyone can learn on their own. This is not right. Sorry.
Danke, Muhadisa, and I think Muhadisa is
Thank you, Muhadisa, and
very essential in the middle of all the discussions that are going on. There is a hierarchy that has been infiltrated into the minds not only of the host community, but even among the ones who have come to us. And I think we need to be aware that every child has his or her potentials as our children, and we need to pick up every child where he or she is. That's about diversity and social cohesion. Thank you for reminding us, Muhadisa. I promise you we will keep it in mind during the next session. Thank you so much. So, Catherine, you were right. Give the children to do, and they will know what to do. They do remind us where we always also get off track. And allow me to just welcome in the middle of us, since we are talking on social cohesion and diversity, all the teachers of mother tongue language that are teaching Arabic, Farsi, Dari, who are among us today. And we're grateful for the Stadtschulrat Wien and das Sprachenzentrum for giving them off these 2 days to be with us and to take something with them into their schoolwork. Welcome to each and every one of you among us today. When Europe is talking about social cohesion and diversity, we usually say the Scandinavian countries are the one with the promise. They are leading. And so I would like to give the next floor to Professor Nihad. You're yourself of a migrant background, and you are now focusing on issues related to child education and also issues of social cohesion. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, and I'm very grateful to be invited here to be a part of this occasion. I came as a refugee myself back in 1992 from Bosnia, and I became professor 6 years ago at Stockholm University. So there is a hope, isn't it? My research is about migration and education, and I also worked with as a mother tongue teacher and language support teacher for Bosnian refugees in the middle of 1990s. And for the last couple of years, I've been doing research on refugee students, on inclusion, integration, and things like that. So I don't have so much time here to tell you about my results of my research. I'd just like to start by reflecting a little bit of what has been said previously from colleagues from Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. And I'm really humble here, as you mentioned. I mean, how can you criticize, say, you know, you don't do it right, things like that? I'm really feeling humble. And in Sweden has been a discourse that we have received so many refugees, 163,000 in 2015, 70,000 of them were children. And we've been criticizing the rest of European Union, except for Germany and Austria. Why don't they take their responsibility and so on? But now here you are sitting with the people who are talking about 2 million, 3 million, 1.5 million. I know 40% of the population in the country. So it's really making you to put things in the wider perspective and feel humble in front of what you have achieved. But also, when I worked with the newly arrived refugee students in the 1990s, and when I started to do research 15 years later, I realized there is a pattern here that I identified as one problem, and that is that teachers were doing things, and when you ask them why are doing this way, why you have pull-out classes or welcome classes or multicultural as we call them, they say, we've always been doing that. Why do you are focusing on teaching Swedish as a second language or German as a second language for 2 years and not connecting that to the regular curriculum? And they say, because we have always done it. So that's been like one of the problems, that there has been lack of development, and it's not because teachers they didn't want to develop. They didn't have support from leadership. They didn't have resources, and there was very little pressure from the public and the media to change something here. And parents, newly arrived parents, they are so socially weak, so they are just happy to have their kids at the schools. So what you've seen for 20, 30, 40 years, basically the same system in place. So what we have done in Sweden for the last 2 years, we have reformed the system, and we believe it's going to work much better now. One simple device that we have imposed in the system is to map the previous knowledge of newly arrived students. Because one big problem has been that we tended to regard these children as they don't know anything. And they say, I'm from Afghanistan, I attended Quran school or a madrasa for 2 years, you don't know nothing. I'm from Somalia, I attended a school in English in Kenya, a refugee camp for 3 years, you don't know anything. But of course they know, they have a lot of knowledge with them, they have experiences, and we need to take into account this knowledge, those experiences, while we are devising what to offer to these kids in our schools. And also when it comes to teachers, I think Barbara mentioned it, it's a professional learning, peer learning. I understand you can't send all teachers on courses for professional learning. You need to have infrastructure for that. You need to have a lot of resources. But what you can do is to have peer learning, collective learning, collaborative learning among teachers. And the point is, when I talk to teachers in Sweden, they say we would like to know more about the educational system in those countries these kids are coming from. And they want to know more about Syrian educational system. They want to know about Jordan, Turkish, because these kids do not come from Syria anymore. They are coming from Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan to us. And we need to know what did you teach them? What kind of system do you have over there? And so the point is that we are sitting here, and that would be a wonderful platform to develop a further collaboration when you can give our teachers what they need in order to prepare a structure of opportunity in education for these kids. And maybe our teachers can help you because they have obviously had other circumstances to develop curriculum and things for that. So when it comes to what is needed for social cohesion, I mean, it's a large question, but one point, and Barbara pointed out very, very well here, it's to look at the point of organizational level. How do we organize education in our countries? What kind of policy measures do we have? And we are talking about social diversity as something extremely positive. And here in this room, probably we agree with that. But and there are a lot of ideologies and policies in our country saying diversity, is the melody for the future. This is something that we really like. But if you go down to the level in our municipalities, you see that social diversity works as a social capital or cultural capital only when majority is in comfortable majority in certain schools or in certain neighborhoods. If you have majority of minorities and say, this is really social diversity here, we don't call it beautiful social diversity, we call it segregation. There are a lot of immigrants, there are a lot of problems and so on. So the point is, if you want to discuss social diversity in schools, you need to put it in a context of broader understanding and accepting or not accepting social diversity in the society as a whole. We have school choice systems. We have school choice systems in many countries, and we have housing segregations. What are the policy effects of school choice system where parents are allowed to choose, especially in my country where there's a universal voucher, you can choose whatever school you want, you don't need to pay on your own. You have in the UK academies now and probably many other countries. When people are not choosing school because it's a good pedagogy, they're good teachers, they are choosing schools because there is a majority children over there. So they are choosing not pedagogy, but they are choosing friends for their children, and they're choosing comfortable majority. So that's one, and how do we deal with all these consequences of using these beautiful words and documents in practice as a society? What kind of compensatory measures do we have to make it easier for children who are growing up in segregated areas? What are we offering them to compensate for their worse starting point in life? Because there are differences if you attend a school in immigrant-dominated neighborhoods, socially deprived, or if you attend school in an affluent white middle-class area. So what do we do to compensate those children? Because we are providing them with those schools. They can choose themselves. High expectations and working together with parents. There are two more aspects here to promote social cohesion, especially newly arrived parents. I can never understand why a number of our teachers tend to perceive newly arrived parents as they are not interested in their children's education. Like they are the most interested people in their children's education you can meet, but they need to be also treated as equal. And that's one problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Of Europe and moved to Norway. Also to an expert in the field who herself is actually also coming to Norway, not originally from Norway. And Lieutenant, you always are calling for a holistic approach, so please.
Yeah, thank you. First, thank you for inviting me to this panel. It was a little late, the invitation to the panel too, but I would like to come with some reflections today. I'm a senior researcher in the Department of Children and Young People at the Norwegian Center for Violence and Traumatic Stress Studies. And my research has been primarily aimed at the education of young people from refugee and minority backgrounds, with a particular focus on social, cultural, and psychosocial conditions for an inclusive school environment. Previously, I conducted a research project on the resettlement of young unaccompanied minors in Norway, with a special focus on education. And these unaccompanied minors, they were usually aged between 15 and 17 when arriving in Norway. So they were late in their schooling careers. And there were a lot of challenges, both educational and psychosocial challenges. But as we have heard, many of them are very motivated. And then it's the question, why do they not succeed? What is in the system that is not facilitating they can succeed? I will come back to this later, but maybe I can talk about it more in the workshops because we have very limited time. Currently, I'm actively involved in a Nordic project involving Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland. The project is called CAGE, Coming of Age in Exile, which is a multidisciplinary project. Myself, I'm the coordinator of a Norwegian study. It's called Psychosocial and Educational Transitions Upon Resettlement. And it's also about young refugees in secondary school. So what I will come now is with some reflections on refugee education, based on my research, but it's, yeah, I cannot go in any detail. I wrote this: as refugee students from all over the world enter European classrooms, policymakers, educators, and researchers need to rethink refugee education in order to ensure quality and equity. And when we ever heard about the first panel, when the education in emergencies was discussed, we often hear this is because of three approaches. It's called the humanitarian approach, the human rights approach, and the developmental approach. But when we offer refugee education in Europe, in countries where they probably will resettle, there is another principle which is very important here, and that's the principle of inclusion and integration. So, how can we contribute to the inclusion in national school systems and the integration in the whole society? So, and we have heard these beautiful principles, as you said, quality, equity, inclusion. How can they be implemented in national education policies, schools, and classroom practice? So how do we make schools more inclusive? With the inclusive education ambition of providing quality education to respond to the diverse needs of all pupils, not only refugee pupils, of course, it involves a learner-centered approach that is placing students' resources and needs in the center in order to provide them with optimal learning opportunities. I was late in preparing it, so I just have a very funny way of making notes here. But then when we are talking about classroom practice, because then it's the teacher who is very central, because the teacher organizes classroom interaction and allows students to participate. So it's very important that we have already heard teacher training and education policies at promoting the quality of education, of course, and also school leadership. But then it's very important that the teachers have adequate knowledge of how the experiences of war and flight and also living in exile will affect their school functioning. And it's important, I have developed this notion of refugee competent schools. This is very important to provide inclusive education. We are talking about all pupils, but then they should know more maybe about the refugee students. And then I'm not only thinking about the educational challenges, but also the psychosocial challenges. Because during my research, there were several misunderstandings or misinterpretations. For example, you were talking about concentration problems, Camilla, and the teacher think, oh, you might not be interested. If you're not interested, there are many other people who can take your place in the classroom, they say, for example. They don't know, but they may have had nightmares. They have maybe invasive memories. So there can be misunderstandings and misinterpretations. And that's very important that teachers know, have a competence. They don't necessarily have to be psychologists, but they should be able to identify the problems. Maybe they can do something in the classroom, maybe something in schools, or ask for expert help outside school. So even though European schools have a broad experience of educating minority children, they have relatively little experience of educating refugees. And I want to emphasize there are substantial differences between educating refugees and recently arrived, who are recently arrived, and other migrants who have been born and grown up in the country. So there are a few things I want to emphasize. This is the period of short residency in the country of resettlement, often interrupted or incomplete education, being in Norway without parents or without an established social network, and last but not least, the traumatic experience they may have from before the flight, during the flight, and in resettlement. So all of this may have an impact on the school functioning. So inclusive education is actually education is which benefits all students because it's a learner-centered approach. And I hope at this conference we may be inspired because there are so many competent and committed people here. So I am already inspired by being here, and I'm really grateful. And I'm thinking when we talk about children under the radar, it refers to all vulnerable children who are not seen or heard, and we should promote their inclusion in schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, indeed, this is exactly what now is trying to do, is trying to set the link between addressing the issues of education of refugees and also education within our own classrooms. And what you just said, inclusion and inclusive education benefits all. And I would like to go back and to come back to Austria. Mr. Josef Zollert is from the Education Board Office in Styra. And I know that you are also concerned not only with refugee children, but you are very much working and focusing on those children within our own community, either born as Austrians or with migrant background, in order to be in a schoolroom or a classroom that is inclusive and diverse also to them. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. If you don't mind, I would like to use German language because I can express more exactly then. Wir haben
So, in Austria, we've got a very highly developed school system and a highly developed society, and an increasing quota of persons with a first native language that is different from German. And as a society, we are not really sure whether we want to assign a place to these people in our society. And the same goes for the school. There's a great deal of uncertainty of how to deal with this potential of, so to speak, new people. I must also say that traditionally the Austrian school system is highly selective and very segmenting. We are talking a lot about inclusion, and we mean it. In Styria, we've done away with nearly all special schools. But the question is, what is the quality of inner cohesion inside the classrooms, that is? Another problem in Austria that we have in Austria, the support culture is underdeveloped on an international scale because we have the system, the school ends at noon, and afterwards, in the afternoon, the parents are in charge of their children, but this premise cannot be continued. And this is why we invest only very hesitantly in support structures, or have done so. And only by the by, we have begun to react to the developments of last calendar year. And many teachers were certainly overtaxed for the problem. I must also say that in Styria, we have about 3,500 refugee children in all types of schools, and we deal with this task very well on the whole. There are hardly any true problems, except for the fact that we've noticed that there is a problem of the 9th year of compulsory education, which is compulsory, the term of compulsory education in Austria. Higher schools, secondary schools, have fewer pupils with a refugee background, and there are also fewer teachers for German as a second language in those schools than in the compulsory school levels. We also have a problems with intercultural and interreligious attitudes, and we also find it difficult to establish our societal premises and basis that we want to communicate in all directions. And in my opinion, it would be an important vision, and this is something that we should overcome. At the moment, we are unable to ensure educational careers for children with youngsters with a long-term migration background or a refugee background. I'd like to have something like a labor exchange that is in charge of educational development of persons with a refugee background or people who have come to Austria as migrants. And all in all, it's quite difficult in Austria. It's quite difficult to actually complete your formal education once you're adult. This is not a task of the state, but one of private organizations, and which results in a certain quality problem. And certain age groups do not seem from the outside to develop anymore, but this is not true because we know that education is dynamic with a blurred boundaries, so to speak. And the tradition of our educational system actually runs counter to these modern findings. And this is why I think that now we have to realize more than ever before that the people who come to us have a lot of skills, a lot of potential, and these skills and potentials must be realized, and that these people, that we should really invest a lot into these people without hesitating. And also to convey hope, confidence, and an expectation of success. I do hope that there are some indicators already for justified optimism so far, and I do hope that we will be successful traveling along this road. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your inputs. Again, we're just tackling the edge of the whole issue, starting a discussion to bridge the whole issue. And I would like just to end with one experience I had on a panel recently where the issue of integrating refugee children was raised. And a school director said, they would be much better integrated if we see a child who has an F in math and excellent in music, and we would offer that child more music lessons, then he would thrive. And I asked, are we doing it to our own children? Once we start to invest in all of the in all of the potentials and the creativity, each and every son and daughter of us, whether born as Norwegian, Sweden, German, or Austrian, or one that has come, where the parents had come here, or somebody like Mohadisa, like Mustafa, like Yasmin, all of them have the potentials, and I hope we'll be able to help them develop the potentials they have. For all of you who would like to continue on social cohesion within European classroom, I do recommend the workshop number 2 in the afternoon that will be led by Daniel Landau. I give now the floor to my colleagues to make the bridge to the break, and thank you all on the panel 1 and 2 for coming, for sharing your knowledge, and we will keep working on the issue.